Ethan Cole woke before the sun most days. The small alarm clock on the cracked nightstand buzzed at 5 in the morning, and he reached to quiet it before it woke his son. The apartment was small, with peeling paint and a window that barely closed. Still, Ethan smiled when he looked toward the small bed beside his. Lucas slept like a bundle of dreams, one arm hanging over a little stuffed bear. Ethan's heart warmed. For his boy, every day was worth starting early. He moved quietly into their tiny kitchen and began preparing a lunchbox. 2 sandwiches, 1 apple, and a cookie he had bought with leftover change. Money was always short, yet he found ways to make Lucas's lunches special. It reminded him that he could still give his son something that felt like love, even if life offered little else. After a quick shower, he put on his old custodial uniform. The blue fabric was faded from years of washing, but it was clean. He packed his things and kissed Lucas's forehead before leaving. The walk to the bus stop was cold, the air sharp against his cheeks. He carried a thermos of coffee that no longer tasted fresh by the time he reached the office tower downtown. Sterling Enterprises stood tall above the city, all glass and steel. To Ethan, it looked like another world, one built for people who never had to count change before buying milk. Inside, marble floors shone like mirrors and hallways smelled faintly of perfume and ambition. Ethan greeted the security guard, who nodded in the quiet way men do when life has scraped both of them raw. Then he started his rounds. His job was simple, but endless. Sweep, mop, empty trash cans, wipe windows, polish chrome until it gleamed. The office woke slowly as rich shoes tapped across the floor. No one looked at the custodian pushing his bucket along the corridors. Some passed so close he could smell their cologne, yet none saw him. It hurt a little, but he had grown used to it. That morning, while cleaning the executive floor, Ethan heard voices from the glass conference room. The CEO, Vivian Chase, was holding a meeting with her staff. Her voice carried strength and precision. She was known in the city as the woman who built empires, who could crush competitors with a single phone call. Ethan stayed near the door, waiting for them to finish so he could clean up. When he finally entered, a tray of coffee sat near the edge of the long table. He carefully picked it up, but 1 cup slipped from the lid and splashed across the marble. The hot liquid spread quickly toward Vivian's chair. Before he could stop it, her assistant gasped, and the room went silent. Vivian's sharp eyes lifted toward him. "What are you doing? Can you not even handle coffee?" she said coldly. Her voice was crisp, every word a small blade. His face burned. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll clean it right away." She pushed her chair back and stood. "This floor is for people who work hard to make success happen, not for someone who can't manage a tray of drinks." Her colleagues turned away awkwardly. No one spoke, but Ethan felt their glances. He knelt to clean, hiding the sting behind silence. There was no defending himself. In that space of glass and money, his voice would mean nothing. When the floor was spotless again, he nodded politely and left. Inside, a quiet ache pressed against his chest, an ache older than that morning. In the janitor's closet, he leaned against the cool wall. He breathed slowly, staring at his work-worn hands. On his wrist, below the edge of his sleeve, part of a mark appeared. A tattoo, old and faded, but once proud. It was shaped in lines and curves that suggested meaning he didn't share with anyone. It felt wrong sometimes, like a secret that pulsed with memory. But Ethan had no time for secrets. Lucas needed him, and that meant swallowing pain and keeping his head down. He straightened up, filled his mop bucket again, and kept cleaning. Hours passed. When daylight thinned into late afternoon, the busy voices of executives drifted away. Ethan stayed late, as always. He found comfort in silence after the crowds left. The soft rhythm of his mop strokes eased his thoughts. Sometimes he imagined another life, one where people called his name not for cleanup, but for something that mattered. When he finally left, the city was dark and glowing. He took the same bus home, eyes half closed. The driver nodded at him kindly. At home, Lucas waited with a smile, too bright for such a small room. Ethan lifted him up, spinning him once until they both laughed. The world could be cruel and loud and full of people who did not see him. But none of that mattered when his son held him tight. In that small apartment, under weak yellow light, Ethan Cole found peace again. What he did not know was that the small tattoo under his sleeve would soon open a door to a truth that would change everything. Ethan woke up before sunrise again. The morning light slipped through the cracks of the window and touched Lucas's sleeping face. The boy had been breathing heavily through the night, and Ethan had stayed awake for hours listening to the sound. When he touched his son's forehead, he felt heat. Lucas had always been strong, but this time the fever did not fade. Ethan dressed quickly and called in to his supervisor, asking for time off. Taking the bus to the hospital, he held Lucas close to his chest. The boy's small fingers curled around his shirt. The hospital smelled of medicine and cold air. A nurse led Ethan to a small room where a doctor listened to Lucas's chest and took notes. The doctor said it might be an infection, nothing to panic over, but they needed to run a few tests. Ethan nodded and signed the papers with shaking hands. After the nurse left, he sat beside the bed holding Lucas's hand. He spoke softly, telling small stories about superheroes and knights who looked just like his boy. Lucas smiled weakly, and Ethan's heart eased just a little. Hours passed. Outside the window, clouds crossed the sky. At the same time, across the city, Vivian Chase was stepping from her black car in front of the same hospital. She had come to visit the children's wing as part of a company donation event. Cameras waited and her assistant texted directions as she fixed her jacket. Vivian was a woman who always looked ready for the next deal, every step planned and steady. Yet lately her mind had felt heavy. Since the day she insulted the custodian, something had been uneasy inside her. She had seen many people in her life, but that man's quiet face had stayed in her thoughts. He had looked neither angry nor afraid, only hurt. She remembered the silence in the room after her words and the way everyone avoided his eyes. It was supposed to be a small event, nothing important, but it rested in her memory like a stone. When Vivian finished the photo session in the children's ward, she walked down a side corridor for a moment of space. That was when she noticed a familiar figure through the half-open door of a small room. Ethan sat in a chair beside a hospital bed, still wearing the faded uniform from the company. The little boy lying there had his same dark hair and quiet smile. For a moment, Vivian froze. Part of her wanted to turn away, but another part drew her closer. She stood at the doorway, unseen. Ethan was reading softly from a children's book, his voice calm and warm. He smiled between the lines, even when his eyes looked tired. The sight unsettled her more than any board meeting ever had. This was not the broken man she had shouted at. This was a father holding his world together with care. When he looked up and saw her, surprise spread across his face. He stood quickly. "Miss Chase," he said politely, his voice unsure. "I was just passing by," she answered quietly. "Is your boy sick?" He nodded, eyes low. "Just a fever," the doctor said. "He will be fine soon." "Thank you for asking." There was nothing she could add to that.
The word she used so easily.
In meetings felt heavy and wrong here.
I looked at Lucas and said,
He looks strong.
"Hi."
I hope he recovers fast. He smiled faintly, and she gave a small nod before leaving. In the hallway, she stopped near the glass window. The air felt different now. The man she had insulted was not what she had thought. He was not invisible, not useless, not a ghost in the office halls. He was fighting every day for someone else and never asking for pity. Back in her car, Vivian stared out the window, lost in thought. The city lights blurred together as she replayed the image of Ethan holding his son's hand. For years, she had believed success was measured in power, titles, and control. Yet that quiet image of a father caring for his child spoke of a strength she did not understand. That night, Ethan sat by Lucas's bed in the hospital. The doctor said the fever had gone down a little, but they would stay for observation. Ethan whispered prayers, even though he rarely prayed. His eyes were heavy, his back sore, yet a soft calm filled him, because his boy's breathing sounded easier. In the dim light, Ethan rolled up his sleeve to wash his hands. The faint tattoo on his wrist caught the glow of the bedside lamp. It was a strange design, part of a crest shaped in symbols he never explained to anyone. The edges of the ink looked old, but the meaning behind it felt alive. Sometimes he wondered about it. His late grandfather had told him once, long ago, that their family had roots deeper than they knew. Ethan had never cared for old family stories, yet whenever he felt lost, the small tattoo reminded him that he came from something that once mattered. He kissed Lucas's forehead before lying back in the chair. Outside, the wind shook the branches against the glass. He thought of his job, of the CEO who now knew he existed, but all that could wait. Now only one thing mattered. His son was getting better, and in that small hospital room, Ethan Cole felt he could take on another day. At that same hour, Vivian sat in her penthouse apartment, staring at her reflection in the dark window. For the first time in years, she felt unsure of who she was. In her mind's eye, she still saw that tattoo glowing faintly on his wrist, a symbol that seemed to whisper of stories unfinished and secrets not yet awakened. The weeks that followed passed slowly for Ethan. Lucas had recovered and returned to school, though he still coughed sometimes at night. Ethan went back to work at Sterling Enterprises, cleaning the same floors and washing the same windows. The office no longer felt the same. He noticed that a few people, including Vivian Chase, looked at him differently now. Some nodded to him when they passed. Some lowered their eyes, unsure of what to say. Ethan did not hold anger. He smiled politely and carried on with his duties. Vivian began to appear more often on the floors where he worked. She asked short questions about maintenance, about how many people worked in his crew, about how long he had been employed. They were simple questions, yet each one felt unnecessary. Ethan sensed she wanted to say more, but did not know how. He answered her kindly and kept his head low. One evening, the company held an annual charity gala in the main hall. The space buzzed with light and laughter as the richest people in the city filled the room. Every corner was decorated with glass sculptures, golden ribbons, and shining chandeliers. Ethan and the other custodians were asked to help before the event and stand by in case of spills or accidents. Ethan stayed near the back behind the catering staff, wiping a small table that had caught dust. He felt out of place in his work uniform among people in suits and dresses. Still, he found a quiet peace in being invisible. He could watch others live the kind of life that once might have been his dream. During the middle of the evening, a sound of surprise filled the hall. One of the tall glass statues at the center began to tilt. A waiter had bumped into it while turning. Ethan saw it happen from across the room. Without thinking, he dropped his cloth and ran forward. He caught the base of the sculpture before it shattered, his arms shaking under its weight. The guests gasped. Vivian turned quickly, her heels clicking across the marble. When she reached him to help steady the glass, her eyes caught something unexpected. His sleeve had pulled up during the rush, revealing the tattoo on his wrist. The mark glimmered faintly under the golden light. Her heart stopped for a second. The shape was one she had seen before, long ago. It was the same crest that hung in the private office of the company's first owner, Henry Cole. She had worked under him early in her career. The crest had been his family symbol. When Henry passed away and the board took control of Sterling Enterprises, no heir was found. The Cole line was believed to have ended, yet now she saw that mark again, fresh and living on the wrist of the man she had once humiliated. Ethan noticed her stare and quickly lowered his arm. "I am sorry if I caused a scene, ma'am," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, you saved the evening," she replied, her voice softer than usual. He stepped back, and the music resumed. Yet Vivian felt her mind spinning. Could it be a coincidence? It was the same curved line, the same tiny flame pattern in the center. She could not forget it. After the guests left and the lights turned low, Vivian found Ethan near the service hall. He was cleaning the spot where the sculpture had stood. She approached him slowly, her voice steady but gentle. "That mark on your wrist? Where did you get it?" Ethan hesitated, looking down at his hand. "It is from my grandfather," he said. "He told me it was our family's crest, a reminder that we came from people who built something big a long time ago. But I never knew the story. Well, he passed away when I was young." Vivian felt her breath catch. "What was his name?" "Henry Cole," Ethan answered simply. The name fell into the quiet hall like a key turning in a lock. Vivian could hardly believe it. All the stories of the company's beginning flooded back to her. Henry Cole had been a man of vision, a fair leader who built Sterling Enterprises to help the city grow. After his death, control had moved to investors and eventually to Vivian herself. The entire time, she had believed there were no living heirs. And now the heir had been scrubbing her floors. She stepped closer. "Ethan, do you understand what that means?" Her voice trembled slightly, a sharp contrast to her usual composed tone. He gave a small shrug. It means my grandfather worked hard and left behind something good. I have always been proud of that, but I am just a man with a job and a son. I do not think it means more. Vivian shook her head. Does. That crest belongs to the founders of Sterling Enterprises. This company was your family's creation. For a long moment, silence filled the space between them. Ethan looked lost, almost frightened. I do not want anything from this company, he said firmly. I only wanted a living for Lucas and myself. The past does not pay rent or buy food. Vivian watched him, amazed. In his refusal of power or wealth, she saw a dignity she had never understood before. He was not driven by greed or revenge. He only wanted peace. When he walked away that night, Vivian stood alone in the quiet room. Her reflection in the glass wall looked different. She had insulted him once for being beneath her, but the truth had turned everything upside down. Ethan Cole was not a ghost in the building. He was the true name behind it. Outside, rain began to fall on the silver streets. Ethan pulled his jacket tighter and smiled faintly when he thought of Lucas asleep in their small apartment. He had no idea how much his life had just changed, but something deep inside him stirred. The crest on his wrist, once just a reminder of family, now glowed in his heart as a link to a destiny that neither wealth nor pride could erase. The night after the gala lingered in Vivian's thoughts like a storm that refused to pass. She lay awake replaying every detail of what she had seen. The mark on Ethan's wrist, the name Cole, the calm in his eyes when he spoke of wanting nothing for himself. It was hard to believe that the man she once called useless was the blood of the family that built the company she led. The truth felt both heavy and humbling. The next morning she arrived early to the office, long before the staff came in. She went straight to the archives room and unlocked an old cabinet that had not been opened in years. Inside were the original documents of the company's founders. She spread the pages across the table, tracing her finger over the symbol that matched Ethan's tattoo. The curves, the flame at the center, even the tiny mark at the edge were the same. There could be no mistake. When the staff arrived, she carried a silence within her that no one dared to question. The world outside her office still believed she was the cold and sharp leader who could not be shaken, yet inside her thoughts turned in circles. Later that evening, she went down to the service level where Ethan worked. He looked surprised to see her walking in the same hallway as the custodians. "Miss Chase," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, "you should not be here. It is not safe when the floors are wet." Vivian smiled faintly. "I wanted to thank you again for what you did at the gala. But more than that, I wanted to talk." He hesitated but nodded. They stood near the doorway, the sound of buckets and water echoing behind them. "Ethan," she began, "I looked into the company's old records. Your grandfather, Henry Cole, was the man who built all this. The world thought his line had ended, but it has not. You are his grandson. That means you are the rightful heir of Sterling Enterprises." Ethan let out a slow breath. "I do not know what to say. I never wanted anything. The company is yours now. I am just someone cleaning the floors." "It is not that simple," Vivian said softly. "The board has always respected the Cole legacy. If they learn who you are, they will want to use your name. They will try to make you a symbol, a story to bring good fame. You must be prepared for that." "I do not want fame," he said. "I only want my son to grow happy. That is all." Vivian looked at him and saw truth in his words. She felt something stirred deep inside her, something she had once forgotten: respect, not for power, but for kindness. She began to see Ethan differently, not only as the man she had wronged, but as someone who reminded her what real strength looked like. Over the next few weeks, she found reasons to meet with him. Sometimes she brought papers that needed his signature for verification. Other times, small requests for repairs in her office. Yet each encounter became longer than the one before. Their conversations began with small talk about work, but slowly opened to stories about childhood, dreams, and fears. Ethan spoke about raising Lucas alone after losing his wife. Vivian listened with quiet interest, feeling drawn to his honesty. In return, she told him about the weight of being alone at the top, where success often meant losing friends and trust. They began to understand each other. In small moments, between shared smiles and simple words, something gentle formed between them that neither fully recognized. But peace never lasts long in big towers. One afternoon, while Vivian was in a meeting, members of the board brought her shocking news. someone had discovered Ethan's identity. A copy of the birth record had been passed to the legal department. The news would spread by morning. The board wanted to act fast. They proposed a press release and a public event to present Ethan as the lost heir returned. For them, it was a chance to make the company look noble and historic again. Vivian listened without speaking, her hands folded tightly together. She knew they cared only for image, not for the man himself. When the meeting ended, she sat alone, thinking of Ethan's words. He did not want attention. If the world found out in this way, it would crush him. That evening, she found him cleaning the windows near the main entrance. "Ethan," she said, her voice urgent, "they know. The board found out about you. Tomorrow they plan to make it public." He looked at her steadily, calm but serious. "Then there is nothing I can do. If they want to tell the story, I cannot stop them." "Yes, you can. I can help. I will tell them you refuse to take part in it," she said. "If I protect your name, they will listen." He shook his head gently. "You have already done more than enough. I will not let you fight my battles. I promised myself never to chase power, and I will not start now." Vivian felt frustration rise in her chest. Yet beneath it was admiration. He stood in the face of everything she once believed mattered, and showed her that peace and honor were worth more than control. When she went home that night, her reflection in the mirror looked softer. She had made her choice. If the board wanted to use Ethan, they would have to go through her first. For the first time in years, Vivian Chase decided to stand for something greater than her own success. In another corner of the city, Ethan watched Lucas sleep and thought about the future. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but deep down he trusted that somehow the truth, once uncovered, could lead not to ruin, but to something better. Perhaps even to a new beginning born from kindness, forgiveness, and quiet strength. The morning sunlight spread over the glass tower of Sterling Enterprises, shining on every window. Inside, the mood was tense. The board members had gathered early, waiting for Vivian Chase. Papers and tablets were spread across the long table. Everyone whispered about the night's rumor. By now, every senior executive knew that the quiet custodian was the grandson of Henry Cole, the company's founder. The story had spread fast, and the board wanted to use it. When Vivian entered, the room went silent. She placed her hands on the table and looked at each face. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear," she said in her calm but firm voice. "Ethan Cole will not be used for publicity. He does not want his name turned into a headline." One of the board members frowned. "Vivian, this story could bring our company glory. Imagine the headlines. The lost heir working among us. It would make Sterling Enterprises look loyal to its roots. It could raise our value overnight." Vivian shook her head. "No, he saved this company once through quiet work, not with fame. If we do this, we betray the very values Henry Cole built it on. We will not expose him without his consent." The board debated for hours. Some shouted about missed opportunities, others warned of bad press. Vivian stood her ground. For the first time in years, she was not protecting her position, but protecting someone else's peace. After the meeting ended, she called Ethan and asked him to meet her in the same room where they had first spoken after the gala. When he walked in, he looked tired but calm. "I stopped them," she said softly. "No one will speak your name to the media. You are safe." He nodded with quiet gratitude. "Thank you. I was afraid they would turn this into a show. I will not let that happen," she said. "This company belongs to you in more ways than a document could ever prove. You showed me that success means nothing without heart. I used to believe that business had no place for kindness, but you have changed that." Ethan smiled slightly. "You have changed too. When I first met you, you scared everyone. Now I think you are learning what matters." He looked down at his hands. "I cannot take back what my grandfather lost, but maybe we can fix what came after him." His words settled between them like a promise. From that day forward, Vivian worked with Ethan behind the scenes. She included his ideas in community programs and encouraged him to help rebuild the company's relationship with the workers. Ethan used his position quietly, never searching for credit, pushed for better working conditions, fair pay, and kinder management. The workers respected him. They admired how he listened and spoke to everyone with the same calm voice he used with his son. Word began to spread inside the company that the janitor who had saved the gala was different. Lucas often visited his father after school. He ran through the hallways carrying his small backpack, waving at secretaries and guards who now greeted him with wide smiles. Vivian liked the boy and often brought him snacks from her office. Watching them together made something warm move inside her. In those moments, she felt that life had given her a second chance to find the meaning she lost in her climb to the top. Months later, the company planned a new project, a foundation named after Henry Cole. It was designed to help children from poor families with education and healthcare. Vivian insisted that Ethan should help launch it. At first he refused, uncomfortable with attention, but she convinced him gently. It is not about money or fame, Ethan. It is about honoring where you came from and showing Lucas what strength looks like. On the day of the event, the main hall was filled with employees, partners, and guests. The large banner read the Henry Cole Foundation opening ceremony. Vivian walked to the microphone and began her speech. Her voice was steady, but her eyes often turned toward Ethan and Lucas standing nearby. This company was built on dreams and hard work, she said. Today we are reminded that greatness does not always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a uniform and carries a mop. Sometimes real leadership begins in silence. I stand here today because someone showed me that integrity and compassion are the true building blocks of success. Please join me in honoring Ethan Cole, whose quiet strength and courage have reminded us who we are. Applause filled the hall. Ethan stepped forward shyly, Lucas holding his hand. He said only a few words, but each one came from the heart. I am just a man doing my job and raising my son. Grandfather taught me that every person has worth. I believe Sterling Enterprises can stand tall again if we remember that. His simple words touched everyone. Vivian felt her eyes burn with emotion. When the ceremony ended, she walked beside him, out onto the terrace. The city stretched below them, lights shining like stars. Do you ever think about what life might have been if you had known your family's truth earlier? She asked. Ethan thought for a moment. Maybe I would have made mistakes chasing power. Maybe I needed to start from the ground to understand what matters. Vivian smiled at him. Then maybe fate knew what it was doing. Lucas tugged at his father's sleeve, pointing at the sky. Dad, look at the stars. Ethan lifted him up, and together they looked at the shimmering lights above the city. Vivian stood beside them, the wind brushing against her hair. In that quiet moment, the bitter start of their story felt far away, replaced by something new and bright. The man who once pushed a mop now stood as the heart of the company he was born to inherit. The woman who once lived only for success found peace in gratitude and love. And under the city's silver glow, between a father, his son, and a woman who had learned to feel again, an invisible string of fate held them together, steady and strong.